Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. It's time to plant vegetable seeds. We'll show how to plant your favorite seeds. Also, is there a low muddy spot in your yard? It might be a great place for a rain garden. We'll tell you how to build one. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Goodwin's Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining us today is Walter Battle. Walter is a UT Extension County Director in Haywood County, and Mary Wilder, who's a Master Gardener right here in Shelby County, will be joining us later. All right, Walt, we're outside.
Yes.
Beautiful day.
Yes.
I think we're gonna do some planting, right?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, we have this bed here, and it's been properly built and constructed.
Okay.
And all we really want to do just to plant some of our seeds here. Let me just get here. This old spurge here. Let's just get
there's plenty of it in
stuff
here.
out of the way there. That stuff's just a mess. You know. Now I'll tell you what, Chris. You know I'm getting old and stuff now. I can't remember like I used to. So what I had to create me a little cheat sheet here. And what I did, I took an old stick here, one of my gardens here.
Okay.
And one of my yardsticks. And I just basically said, look, I'm just gonna remember where to plant stuff. So I marked on here the planting depths of things I like to plant, and I also have the spacings.
Okay, I see
so
that.
Watch this. The first thing I'm gonna plant is some squash. Everybody loves squash.
Oh, yeah.
And all you want for squash is about 1 inch. Let me get down here.
Okay.
All you want is about 1 inch. Now I'm pretty good. Normally I have a string down here, but I've been doing this so long, I just pretty much know how to take care of that.
I see you know what you're doing, huh?
And I always just get me some seeds here. And all you want to do here, you want to plant these roughly, I always like to plant them about 12. Let's see, I got too many there. Let me just go there, but I'm gonna lighten it. I'm gonna thicken them up just a little bit for this. And this right here will take care of that. That's about 1 inch depth. That's what squash likes.
Okay.
And then you just want to make sure you cover it real nice. Cover it up, and that takes care of that.
Wow.
That's pretty simple.
So that was it?
Yes, yes. I'll be back with a frying pan one day to take care of those. Now, let me show you this right here. Next, let's look at some okra. You have folks who like okra. I know I'm one of them. And let's get us another spot. Let me see here. And I'm just going to.
Yeah, you got that old Bermuda trying to creep up in there.
Bermuda grass is just,
Yeah.
it's just going to try to get there, folks. Ain't nothing you can do about that. Let's just call that out. And okra likes maybe a little bit shallower planting depth. So we're going to go maybe about 1/4 of an inch. Now, like I said, if I use my stick, I would just sit there and just go and measure that. Now, let me get my okra.
All right.
And okra likes to be planted about, it likes it about 10 inches or so is what it likes. So I just, like I said, I've been doing this for so long now. Put one right there, one right there. There's the okra.
All right.
And you can fry it, boil it, whatever you want to do. Now, everybody loves sweet corn. Let's cover that up.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you don't cover it up, the birds will come by and they would just wear you out. Now, I'm going to come over here a little further.
Okay.
Once again, scrape me out of the spot. And let's plant some sweet corn. Everybody loves sweet corn. It's a fun thing to grow and eat. Can't beat it. So I'm going to scratch that out again.
Okay.
And then I'm going to sit there, and that corn likes about 1 inch is what it likes. So I think I pretty much have 1 inch. And I'm going to plant it a little thick also. Usually we go about 1 foot. I'm going to go about 10 inches. Since we're in a small bed here, let me put 2 there. That was a crack. Boy, this is going to be good. I'll be here for the picnic. And let's just cover that one up. I'll get that
Yeah, I see you done this a time or two.
Oh, yes. And then, you know, a lot of people like things like cantaloupes and things like that. Let me, you know, a good, neat garden, that's part of it. And what you want to do with your cantaloupes and watermelons, you want to plant them in a hill. So what I did,
Now, why do we want to do that, though, Walt?
well, it allows good drainage.
Okay.
And you want to put like 3 to 5 seeds per hill.
Per hill. Okay.
And you want to only go about a 1/2 inch deep. So I got 3 seeds here. And let me just put that there. Put this one here. And put that one there. And just close that up. And you'll have you some good cantaloupes there before you know it.
That. Now, is there information on the back of those seed packs, just in case everybody doesn't have
Yes.
your brilliant memory to get this figured out?
Yes, let me tell you now, on this, I love the way that the seed companies put the information on the packs. They're going to tell you the planting dates,
Okay.
the spacings between rows, the depths of the seeds, and also real critical is this says pack for sale by 12/15. So that means these seeds are good and viable for the 2015 growing season.
Okay.
And you shouldn't have any problems. I mean, and it also will have your zone where you live, like it shows the state of Tennessee here in a little gray area, so you know that's your zone, and you plant according to that month.
Okay.
It says May, July, May
within that
July
time
for the
frame.
squash, so you're within that time frame. A lot can be said. Now, I also tell people, be a little careful with the bargain seeds. When you look over there and they have, I don't know, 20 packs for $2. Now, you might be getting what you pay for there. But a lot of times those seeds are okay. To be honest with you, they're okay.
Now, how can we tell if those seeds are viable? What's a good way to determine that?
Definitely. You can do a germination test.
Okay.
And all you do is just, you want to dampen a paper cloth, put about 10 of those seeds in that cloth, put it in an airtight jar, set it in a windowsill at room temperature for about 7 to 10 days, and then come back and count how many sprouted, and that'll give you an idea of the germination rate. And you can adjust your planting according to that.
Okay. All right. Now, I guess once we get the seeds in the ground, you have to come back and water those, I'm sure.
Oh,
right?
definitely. Now, I'll come back after a while and water this bed real good, clean up all that little excess grass there, and probably plant some more seeds because I just love planting. And then, like I said, but what you want to do is just keep it moist. You don't want to keep it wet. You want to keep it moist. That's what you want to do.
Moist, not wet.
That's
okay,
right.
because most folks overwater, I think.
That's right. A lot of people overwater.
Okay.
Overwater. That's a big problem.
So the seeds don't germinate. Could that be the problem if you're putting out too much water? Maybe you rotting
Oh,
the seed
yes,
out?
yes. And I would tell you the other big problem I see, planting too deep.
Ah, yeah.
I've seen people plant, that's when I planted my garden, it hadn't came up. When did you plant? 3 weeks ago. Yeah. Then I dig down and I find corn, like a foot in the ground.
Right, and they're struggling trying to get up.
Yes.
Okay. Well, look, Walt, we definitely appreciate that.
Well, happy to show.
And you'll be back with the frying pan, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Miss Mary, let's talk about rain gardens. Real popular now. We're getting a lot of questions over the Extension Office about rain gardens.
Okay.
So let's start with this. What is a rain garden?
Well, a rain garden is nature's puddles. And if you think about the water cycle, it rains, the rain comes down, it washes across the land as it's moving across the soil and across the earth. Sometimes it stops in a puddle. Sometimes it gets detained in that water. It absorbs down into the soil, replenishes the aquifer. The water that doesn't stay in the puddle eventually makes its ways to rivers and streams and evaporates back up, condensates, comes back down, and it's the cycle. But in our human environment, we've sort of added some elements to nature. We've added streets, we've added roads, we've added patios, driveways, roofs, and we've created sort of a water superhighway. And we think of water in some ways as a waste product. We put gutters, we put downspouts, we put concrete swales in our yards. We do all sorts of things to get the water away from us. And so a rain garden is really going back and thinking about how water functions in the water cycle and putting it back into our yards' environments. And of course, as gardeners, we like to do things as natural as we can. And so the rain garden is nature's puddle.
Okay, nature's puddle.
Yes.
Don't you like that, Walt?
I like that.
All right, so here's the next question, though.
Okay.
Is it a water garden? Because most folks think so.
Right. There's confusion between a water garden and a rain garden. A water garden is a water feature. It's
Right.
intended to hold water. There's a difference between detention, like when you were a kid and you got detained after school, but you got to go home after an hour or so.
Okay.
Whereas retention is you got held back. You were held there. You had to stay. A water garden is retention. You're actually holding the water. It's a water feature. It stays there. It functions like a small pond or lake or whatever you've created, waterfall, and it's intended to be there, and you have to think of that ecosystem.
Okay.
A rain garden is just detention. It is that puddle. It's that point in the water cycle where the water is slowed down and held in the environment.
Boy, good analysis. I like that one. So what's the rain garden's place in the water cycle?
Well, it's intended, like I said, as a puddle to catch that water. So what you're going to do in your yard is you're going to look at where that water is moving through your yard, where you may have a washout, and where you want to create a way to create that puddle, to create that capture. And what it does is there's two things. In that superhighway, you're picking up all the pollutants off of your yard's fertilizers, off of the driveways, off of the streets, the oil that comes up through the asphalt. And if we send it through a hard surface superhighway of concrete and whatever, that material it stays with us. It goes straight into our surface waters, straight into our creeks and streams and rivers and lakes. But if you do biofiltering or you put these puddles in their way, the water seeps through the earth, and anywhere from 30 to 40% has been demonstrated that those pollutants are absorbed and cleaned and eaten by the soils as they perk down into the aquifer.
That's a pretty good percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. So where do you place a rain garden? I'm sure everybody wants to know that.
Well, you look for those areas where the water is naturally flowing. I tell folks, get out there with your little video camera or your cell phone camera when it's really doing one of our Mid-South gully washers and watch where it's going. Some of you may already have spots in your yard where you can see where the soil's been eroded or washed, where you're constantly fighting that, and that may be a natural place to look.
Okay. Now, the next question behind that is going to be this. How big? Because I'm one of those, I tell people, to start off small, but how big?
Well, in other regions of the country, it's a very exact science because they're actually really trying to slow the water. Where their water tables are high and where they're having real strong issues with surface water, they have very exact measurements where you look at your roof, you look at your driveway, you look at the area you're trying to control the runoff, and you measure according to that. And there are many manuals out there, and at the end of the little talk, you can go to that Tennessee Smart Yards, the UT program that's connected with our extension office.
Yes.
And it will give you diagrams and tell you how to measure and how to figure out, how much area are you draining, and therefore how much of a garden should you build.
Okay, good deal. We'll make sure we get that website out there for our viewers. How about the perk test? We always talk about soil tests, so let's talk about the perk test.
Well, in the Mid-South, we're very concerned about our clays.
Yes.
So we want to know if what we're doing, if we are detaining water, if we're creating an area where we're going to hold water for a little bit, are we going to create a problem for ourselves? So you're going to do a perk test where you'll dig 1 foot, you'll prime the soil by filling that 1 foot hole up. Then once it drains, you will do your test. You'll put the water back in. 24 to 36 hours, the water should drain out. If it doesn't, you've got an issue. you may have standing water, and then you get into the whole mosquito issue and things like that. So you want to do that perk test to make sure. There are ways to amend the soil, do double digging. All of that's covered in those manuals that I've directed you to.
Good deal. All right, how about plant material? You know that's what the gardeners want to hear about, Ms.
That's
Mary.
right.
What
Well,
are we going to put in this rain garden?
Well, the good thing is that because it's a nature's puddle and you're doing something within the water cycle, you're also going to go with native plants. I mean, you are mimicking what's natural, so that means native plants will be very amenable to being planted in these gardens.
Okay.
You're going to go through the year's water cycle. You're going to have wet feet periods. You're going to have dry feet periods. The garden itself, the way they're designed, you have sections of the garden that are drier and wetter. And I guess I didn't really talk about how that garden is designed, but when the water comes in, usually you have an inlet, and the opening area is shallower than the exit area.
Right. Okay.
The exit area is deep, so it's like a bowl that's kind of tipped up to take the water coming in and then hold it as it goes out the back end. Sometimes you have very defined inlets, and sometimes you have very defined outlets. And then your plant material, the edges are usually drier and wetter in the center.
Okay.
Plants that have been used, and there's also references to several Tennessee Wild native plant guides in that Tennessee Smart Yards
Okay,
website.
so they can find that there.
But
Okay.
I've used Rudbeckia, I've used Echinacea, I have Joe Pye in my garden, muley grass, several gardens that I looked at in Chattanooga, and they have them in a lot of municipal installations, and their extension office has a big
Okay,
rain garden
good
in front of it. They used the Tennessee iris.
Okay. Quickly, while we have just a little time left. So if people wanted to hear about rain gardens, could they contact the Master Gardeners for that?
They sure can. We have a speakers bureau,
Yes.
and we have a PowerPoint presentation that's about an hour.
Okay.
So any garden club or any interested group could ask and get a speaker.
And they'll be doing just fine if they got you.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate that. All right, so here's our Q&A session, and Miss Mary, you join us.
Okay.
If you have
If
any
I
comments.
can, I will.
Okay, if you can, you will. All right, Walt, here's our first viewer email. What is the best way to get rid of poison ivy without killing everything around it? And this is from Robin in Oxford, Mississippi.
Well, I'll tell you what I did last year,
right.
because I had that same problem in
Okay.
our office. And basically, I, of course, put on some gloves, and I pulled the poison ivy out, and I mixed some glyphosate, and I just wiped it on those leaves. That way it didn't kill the flowers and all that. I wasn't spraying it. I just wiped it on, and it killed it down to the root. And I would tell you, it has not come back.
Wow.
So
It
it
has
worked.
not come back.
Right. So that's the best way I can tell you to do it.
Okay. I did it another way. I left it about 2 inches up, cut it, got a sponge out, dipped it in some glyphosate, and just kind of wiped it on there. Of course, it's green tissue, took it
Yep.
up pretty rapidly, knocked it out. So I didn't have a problem with it.
Right.
But be careful around the poison ivy. Some people are allergic to it.
Right.
Okay. But that should do the trick for you.
Yes.
And there are some brush killers out there,
Yes,
as
yes.
well that you can find, different trade names or whatever, but they're
Right.
brush killers. Triclopyr is pretty much the active ingredient. But be very careful, especially around your desirable plants. Yeah, get it out of there first or cut it. Use the wipe technique, and I think you'll be just fine with that.
Right.
Okay. Here's our second viewer question. Would you please give some tips about growing tomatillos? In past years, there have been lots of husk on the two plants I usually grow, but very few fruits inside the husk. And this is from Charles in Murfreesboro. So what do we think about that? Tomatillos.
The only thing I could kind of think of is that it could possibly be that he's not getting pollination there. I mean, because they do require an insect to pollinate, where tomatoes are wind pollinated. So there's kind of a difference there. And he could also have a situation where I think you have to plant those a little later than tomatoes. So maybe, they're not planted at the right time. That's kind of what my thinking is on it.
Okay, and I agree with that. They need bees to pollinate them.
We need bees for everything.
Hey, you need bees for that.
That's
you see how
right.
important your bees are? And you need more than, of course, one plant. You need two plants
Yes.
for cross-pollination. Okay, and I think that would help. But yeah, Mr. Charles, make sure you have some bees out there. I think that'll help you out a lot. I've never had tomatillos though.
Yes.
I don't know. Have you had them before, Miss Mary? Have you had them?
They're good in salsas.
Good in sauces. Okay.
Yes,
So that's pretty much what they're used for, I guess.
Yes, I've never grown them, but I've had them in sauces.
Okay. All right. So here's our next viewer email, and I saw this in my flower bed not too long ago. Is it a fungus? And if so, what kind of fungus is it? Walt, this is a fungus. It is called the cup fungus because it looks like a little cup.
Okay.
And the thing is, it's a saprophyte, which means it's growing on decaying wood.
Yes.
Okay, decaying material.
Yes.
And it was in a mulch pile, which was in a flower bed, a mulch in a flower bed. So yes, it's growing on that mulch, which is well decayed, which is why you have the cup fungus. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Yes.
Just let Mother Nature do her thing. You know, it'll go away after a little while, it'll decompose and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, just feeding on well decayed organic material, wood.
Yes.
All right. Now here's our next viewer emails. Man, we love these viewer emails.
Oh,
These are good.
yes.
I have a small flower bed. Shamrocks and white clover have taken over. Sounds like mine. Can I get rid of the clover and save the flowers? But listen to this. 3 local nurseries had no suggestions other than pulling the clover out or using Roundup. And this is from David in Brighton. Any thoughts about that, Miss Mary? Anything comes to mind?
Well, he said clover and
shamrocks.
I wonder if his shamrocks are oxalis.
That's what I wondered.
And so, I mean, one thing would be to just clear the bed, take the oxalis out, put it back where he wants it. I mean, clover's clover. It's going to be there. It's,
right.
you know.
And clover, of course, is an indicator of poor soil fertility.
That's right.
So that's why you have the clover.
Okay.
Okay, so you need to build your fertility up.
Yes.
Any thoughts about that, Walt?
No,
that was a good analysis.
That's pretty much it. I think we nailed it here. You might want to try some glyphosate very carefully, spraying it to kill it if you want to go that route, or, you know, just have to just get it out with hand with a hoe or something.
Yeah, if you want to go that route, I would make sure I would cover up
Yes,
those desirable plants.
Yeah, be careful.
With a bag or something like that, but I'd be very careful. And I'll tell you something else, though, that I do in my own beds. We've had a lot of moisture. Or you can go out there and water that area. It'll make it easy to pull out.
That's true.
The clover.
That's true.
Yeah, just water the area, just pull it out. Come up very easily. So, David, I hope that helps you out. Okay. Here's our next question. What bug is eating holes in the leaves of my roses? The leaves look window pane-like. Yes. This is not my question, but I have dealt with this in my own rose garden, and I have a lot of roses at home. This would be the rose slug, which is a sawfly larva.
Okay.
They eat the soft tissue right in between the veins.
Okay.
And yeah, you hold it up, this is just like a window pane.
Okay.
And they camouflage very well because they're green in color, just like the leaf.
Oh, okay.
So you have to look underneath the side of the leaf, and sometimes they're on top, but those things, man, camouflage so well. This is what I do. Just a hose, some water, knock it off. Because once you dislodge it, soft body, pretty much knocks them out. Okay. I don't do any, spraying on my roses. I just, knock them off. It's just fine. Now, if you want to use something, you can't use BT.
Right.
This is sawfly. Sawflies are in the same order as wasp and bees, which is Hymenoptera. So no BT will work on these, on the larva. So you have to pull out the heavy stuff,
Yes.
if you're going to use it, which is why I say, again, just knock them off. Or pick them off.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be better.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But we do know there's some other bugs out there that will attack roses. You want to mention a couple of those?
Oh, sure. Actually, the tent caterpillar, will do it. Also, the Japanese beetle.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And the rose shaper. I mean, they will, and they'll kind of give they're more of the skeletal look on the, on the leaf instead of the window pane look. But
Right.
yes.
Yeah, Japanese beetles will skeletonize leaves.
Yes. Yes.
They're just not going. They look lacy after a while, Yeah, they will get added, and there'll be a lot of them around there too.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yes. They definitely do strength in number.
Walt, Miss Mary,
Thank
we're out of
you.
time.
Thank you for having us.
Remember, We love to hear from you. Send us a letter or an email with your gardening questions. Send your email to familyplot@wkno.org. The mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next time for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.